Out of the way, sealed away.
Suddenly, I was pushed by my husband and locked into the underfloor storage. I couldn't see anything in the dark, felt terror, and pushed the lid with all my might, but it wouldn't budge.
Please! Let me out!
I screamed loudly, but my husband's footsteps faded, and I heard the front door slam shut. No matter how much I called for help, my mother-in-law, who lives with us, was on a trip abroad, and I was the only one in the house now. In the darkness, only the word despair came to mind. Unable to move properly in the cramped space, I didn't know what would become of me, and I felt crushed by anxiety until gradually my consciousness began to fade. I am Laura, 30 years old. I managed both my job and all the housework. I met my husband, Tim, at a drinking party organized by a friend. Tim, the life of the party, was sociable, cheerful, and liked by everyone. We hit it off over a shared interest in remaking clothes and vintage fashion, and got married a year ago, starting to live with his parents at his request. Since my father-in-law had already passed away, only my mother-in-law lived in the family home. My mother-in-law was a straightforward person who didn't interfere in our affairs and enjoyed her own time, so we didn't have the typical mother-in-law and daughter-in-law problems and lived peacefully. However, the family home was large but old and showing signs of wear, so my husband suggested we remodel it soon. You'd prefer a new house too, right? Yes, the plumbing is quite old, and a new kitchen would make cooking easier for me. So, we started saving diligently. But then, I noticed our savings were being depleted. Since we were supposed to deposit a fixed amount from our salaries into our joint account every month, if it was being used, it had to be by my husband.
Hey, our remodeling savings have decreased. Do you know anything about this?
Huh?
What are you talking about?
While denying it, he seemed somewhat flustered.
Really? Be honest. You didn't buy something expensive again, did you?
No.
Actually, a friend asked me to lend him some money.
Apparently, a family member of a friend who had helped him a lot in the past was hospitalized suddenly, and they were in a tight spot financially. He said this with a serious look, sorry for using it without telling you, and kept apologizing profusely.
I wish you had discussed it with me first.
I'll get the money back as soon as possible and try to put in more from now on. I decided to forgive him since Tim said so. However, there was no sign of repayment, and the amount my husband contributed to our savings every month did not increase. I didn't like to nag about money, so I kept quiet, but he eventually even stopped saving monthly. His collections haven't increased, so what is he spending on? Despite my doubts, I watched for a while as our savings didn't grow, and finally confronted my husband.
Men have various social obligations, it costs money. Besides, we can live here without remodeling, so what's the problem?
Initially, it was Tim who had suggested the remodeling, so I was shocked by his sudden change. Furthermore, about a month later, he started coming home late citing work entertainments and friends, and began leaving the house on weekends with various excuses. Something seemed off. But, we had been married for just over a year, and I couldn't believe he was having an affair. At that time, I might have been torn between doubting and wanting to believe in Tim. Then one day, Tim came home earlier than usual and fell asleep in the living room while playing with his smartphone. As I approached to cover him with a blanket, I inadvertently saw the screen of his phone, left open and unguarded. There, a chat window on WhatsApp was open, with a cute woman's photo as the icon. Where do you want to go on our date, along with words confirming their love and lined with heart emojis. What is this? Facing a series of exchanges that could only be interpreted as infidelity, I felt my blood boil with anger. No matter what, I couldn't take my eyes off the screen, and as I was browsing through past messages, my husband woke up.
Whoa! Laura, what are you doing? I was looking at those suspicious conversations. What the heck? You shouldn't go through someone's phone like that, that's the lowest of the low. Don't try to dodge this. You're cheating, aren't you?
When I confronted him directly, he lost all his previous bluster and started to stutter.
This person and I were not like that. It was just a social drinking session, and everyone was saying we should hang out sometime, so I was just keeping in touch. Oh, really? So an invitation to go out on a date with heart emojis from a woman who is just a friend? It's just banter. You know that, right, Laura? You've done the same with male friends, haven't you? I would never do something like that.
Seeing Tim trying to justify his actions and desperately explain himself made me feel incredibly sorry for him. Eventually, perhaps realizing he couldn't deceive me any longer, he started to apologize to me with tears in his eyes, and I made him delete the woman's contact information right in front of me.
Promise me you will never contact or meet her again. Got it, got it. I'll forgive you this time, but if something like this happens again, I won't hesitate to divorce you.
Saying that, I really drove the point home to my husband. A few days later, my mother-in-law went on a 2-week vacation abroad with a friend. It was the first time in a while that my husband and I had time to ourselves. Since the cheating scandal, things had been a bit awkward, and I was hoping that spending time alone as a couple would help us get back to how we used to be. And after about 3 days, things with Tim began to feel normal again. On a holiday, as we were discussing what to eat, my husband, who usually says anything's fine, just make something simple, unusually made a suggestion. I'm in the mood for some light pickles, can you prepare some? Sure, I'll get it ready right away. Feeling happy, I went to retrieve the jar of pickles from the underfloor storage in the kitchen when my husband stood behind me. Thinking he was there to help, I turned around, only to be suddenly kicked in the back by Tim and fell into the underfloor storage. Wedged in the tight space, I couldn't get up easily. Watching me struggle, my husband smirked with a sinister grin.
Out of the way, sealed away. What?
His shocking words were followed by him closing the lid.
Hey! What are you doing? Stop joking around.
I pushed the lid with all my might, but it wouldn't budge, as if something heavy was placed on top of it.
Hey, Tim! Open it! Open it, please!
Did my voice not reach my husband? Just as I thought that, I heard him hum happily, now I can finally go see her.
What do you mean? Anyway, get me out of here!
I shouted as loud as I could, but Tim's footsteps faded away, and I heard the front door shut, leaving the house completely silent. Trapped in the small underfloor storage, I continued to struggle. No matter how much I called for help, my mother-in-law was away, and there was no one else in the house. Eventually, in the darkness, only the word of despair came to mind, and I felt myself slipping away. Then, one day a week later, as soon as he opened the front door, my husband exclaimed loudly,
"Wow! What's that smell? Hey! Laura! Are you there?"
But the house was deadly silent, with no response from anyone.
Huh? Wait! Laura! I left her in the underfloor storage, didn't I?
Muttering to himself, he walked towards the kitchen.
No, that can't be right. But, it's been hot recently, and this intense smell, could it be?
Realizing the source of the foul smell was from the underfloor storage, Tim frantically removed the weight and opened the lid. And there, the scene was a pitiful sight.
Whoa! Laura!
Tim looked inside, shocked, and was so taken aback that he couldn't move.
Laura is rotten. I did it. This is bad. What should I do? He crouched down, holding his head, and said in a tearful voice, "What should I do if I'm cursed?"
Hi. What's up? Did you call me?
Whoa! What?
Surprised by my response, he staggered backward, hit his head on the floor, and writhed in pain. I couldn't help but burst into laughter. Actually, that day, as he was wriggling in the crawl space, an old part came loose, and I fell straight down. It seemed that being in an old house, where everything was deteriorating, worked to my advantage. Thus, I managed to escape and was stunned when I saw the weight Tim had placed on top of the storage to ensure the lid wouldn't open. He had even moved the kitchen cabinet to make sure it stayed shut. Unforgivable that he did all this to trap me. I pondered how to exact revenge on my husband and came up with something. Then, I easily repaired the broken part of the crawl space and started throwing things inside. These included the aged beef Tim was looking forward to eating, my usual apron, and something else. I won't let him get away with making me suffer like this. Thus, I placed the kitchen cabinet back on the lid, just as Tim had left it. Then, for a week, the temperature rose above 86 degrees every day. From the second day, a foul smell started wafting from the kitchen, growing stronger and stronger, while I quietly lived upstairs, lying in wait for Tim to come home. Oblivious, my husband returned home leisurely. He must have thought I had passed away, considering the pervasive bad smell and the horror under the floor. Glancing under the floor, the rotting had progressed faster than I imagined, the meat was almost unrecognizable, and my usual apron was visible among the mess. My husband, unable to believe I was standing before him, rubbed his eyes repeatedly.
Is it really you, Laura? Are you alive? I'm alive. As if I'd let myself be killed. If you had left me trapped, I might have ended up like this aged meat. I thought I had done something terrible, but, thankfully.
As he burst into tears and excitedly reached for my hand, I sharply pushed him away.
Where have you been all week?
There was a sudden business trip.
All lies. You were probably spreading your wings with your affair, forgetting you had pushed me aside, weren't you?
I pulled out a photo from my pocket and thrust it in front of him. There he was with his affair partner, unabashedly kissing and hugging.
How? Why do you have such a picture? I've been following you around like a detective this past week. What? No way.
Based on the messages with his affair partner, who I assumed was a colleague, I had been keeping watch in front of his company. After work, he met up with the woman from the WhatsApp profile picture at the station every night, and after dining at a restaurant, they would snuggle up and enter her apartment. So, I documented all of this with photos and videos as evidence.
Now, shall we get everything out in the open?
However, when I pressed him, my husband suddenly became furious.
Wait a minute. Why did you use the aged beef I bought for something like this? It was expensive. Don't change the subject. And it's not just the beef in there, is it? Take a good look. What do you mean?
Saying this, he pinched his nose and peered into the crawl space, lost his balance, and fell inside. Moreover, he seemed to be stuck because his foot got caught in a broken part at the bottom, unable to move.
Ugh. Help me out. It stinks. Do something fast.
Tim was panicking and flailing around, causing his leg to go deeper, and he was crying for my help.
Would you like me to close the lid then? Anything but that, please.
Struggling only made my husband's feet sink deeper into the quagmire, and he realized that the overly aged beef was seeping more and more into his clothes. Given it was also all over his face and hair, he must have reeked.
Do you understand a little now, how I felt being trapped in a place like this? I get it. I really do. Please, I'm sorry, just get me out of here.
Tim kept apologizing, but I was far from done.
Hey, you seem to have forgotten. Did you find what was inside? Huh? What's this?
Oh no.
My treasures.
What he pulled out was his favorite pair of vintage jeans.
These were normally treasured by my husband, who would passionately claim this pair costs thousands of dollars. Hey, Laura, what were you thinking? You know how much I cared about these, right? They were really expensive. What are you going to do about this? Oh, what's more valuable, my life or...
He choked on his words and fell silent as I coldly looked down on him.
So, my life is less important than your jeans. If you hadn't locked me in the crawl space and gone off to your affair, none of this would have happened. That doesn't mean you had to go this far. The smell and stains will never come out. What are you going to do? Condolences.
My husband was clearly shocked, alternating between insults towards me and declarations of love for his jeans, but I couldn't care less. Just then, my MIL returned from her trip abroad earlier than planned. Apparently, neighbors had complained to her about a foul smell coming from our house, prompting her to call me. I explained everything that had happened. Upon entering, she went straight to the stinking kitchen and found my pitiful husband, speechless.
Mom! Perfect timing! Help me! Laura is terrible. She's the worst wife ever.
Oh, who's the worst here? Do you even understand what you've done?
Reflect on your actions thoroughly.
Believing his MIL would save him, my husband let out a pitiful scream.
Why? Aren't you on my side?
She made it clear she wouldn't forgive your actions. When I reported over the phone, she encouraged me to seek revenge as much as I wanted. With an angry glare, she pinched her nose and pushed Tim's head down, closing the crawl space lid.
Hey! Mom! Open up! I apologized to Laura properly. It's resolved now.
He made an unprecedented fuss and even began to gag from the smell, but MIL completely ignored him.
It really stinks, doesn't it?
I'm so sorry for doing this. After about an hour, MIL opened the lid, and Tim was visibly distressed, helped out by both of us.
Laura, I was really wrong.
He was thoroughly chastened, apologizing profusely to me.
Hey! Don't come too close, that stench will stick. And write this down.
I thrust the divorce papers in front of him.
Please forgive me. I really regret it. The affair was just a moment of folly. Then tell me the truth. What did you use the renovation savings for? Asking for money for a friend was a lie. I'm sorry. It was for dinners and dates with the other woman. I wanted to show off a bit.
At his pathetic excuse, MIL and I sighed deeply.
So it was true. There's no starting over. If I tell the truth, won't you forgive me? Of course not. How can I continue with someone as rotten as you? Aged beef is far better. Please, have mercy.
Watching Tim's pathetic, frowning face, I was reminded that this marriage was a mistake, and I couldn't help but let out a big sigh.
I'll be leaving this house, so write the divorce papers immediately. I'll properly claim alimony and division of property later.
Goodbye.
As I coldly rejected my pleading husband, Tim collapsed in tears. Afterward, the divorce was finalized. I received $30,000 in alimony from my husband and $10,000 from the other woman. Since he had spent most of his savings on his affair, he had to borrow money from MIL to pay the alimony. My collection efforts are stricter than any loan shark, just so you know. MIL said with a laugh. As for me, I paid MIL for the repair of the crawl space. She said it was Tim's fault since the house was old, but since I had broken it and left a significant smell, I paid extra. Then, with the alimony and the returned renovation savings, I bought a condo. I have a mortgage to pay, but it motivates me to work harder. For now, I'm enjoying living alone and hope to find love again someday.